All right. Hey, everybody. This is Andy Sokolovich, host of the one and only podcast about your strengths. That's right, folks, Thematics. I am the lead coach from UnleashStrengths.com. Thematics is a video series created by UnleashStrengths to highlight the massive impact the StrengthsFinder assessment and the book, StrengthsFinder 2.0, has had on now over 10, I believe it's 11 million users. It's our belief that the best way to promote its effectiveness and proven results is to interview those who've had experience and be able to embrace the power of strengths-based development firsthand. Each person being interviewed is intimately aware of their strengths and wants nothing more than to share their strength story. So you want to get involved in this podcast? You say, Andy, how do I do that? Well, there's several different ways that you can get involved. One of the ways is if you visit UnleashStrengths.com/live. Again, that's UnleashStrengths.com/live. You can actually view this broadcast in real time. You can also send us a voicemail. That's right. If you go to the website, UnleashStrengths.com, on the right-hand side, there's a tab there that says send a voicemail. You can just click on that, record your voice using your microphone. That sends me an email, and I can actually play the MP3 snippet of your question live on the air. And also, you can always email Andy at UnleashStrengths.com. Again, that's ANDY at UnleashStrengths.com. So let's jump right into it. I have an awesome guest with me today, Stephanie Ruminer. I figured out how to say her last name. It's pretty simple, but I always like to make sure that I get it right. I don't want to embarrass anybody. Stephanie is, how long have you been involved with Strengths?
I've been using the StrengthsFinder program, I guess, about 4 years now.
That's awesome. Well, let's jump right into the interview process. And the first question I always like to ask is, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then also tell us your top 5.
My name is Stephanie Ruminer, and I'm the Director of Operations for Gallagher Benefit Services, Oklahoma, or Arthur J. Gallagher and Company. And my top 5 strengths are, of course, now I totally went blank.
Everybody does it.
Strategic, relator, command, significance, and woo.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Everybody does that. You draw a blank when somebody poses that question. Actually, in order for me to memorize it, I had to come up like a little acronym in my mind so that I could kind of revert back to saying a single sentence, and each sentence started with a letter that represented a talent of mine. So
that's a very good idea.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say it always works, but it's definitely helped me out. So who introduced you to StrengthsFinder and why? How did it kind of land on your desk? Was it a gift? I mean, where did the whole concept of strengths-based development, especially the assessment in the book, where did it come from?
It actually really was a little bit of a gift. So in my prior career here at Gallagher, I was an account executive, and I managed very large groups. And some of our clients had some pretty complex types of maybe either a lot of employees, a lot of locations, a very small HR staff. And so I actually became aware of StrengthsFinder through inputting a benefit admin system of all things, and working with an organization that it was basically their motto that they wanted to know exactly who they were working with. So me as the broker, I took the test. They actually sent me a book, so it was a gift. And the clients that I was working with, both of their HR folks took the test, and then they forwarded us, every single person that would be working with us on the implementation team's strengths, which I was like, what a super cool idea.
Yeah, that is cool. I mean, you're seeing more and more businesses are starting to realize that there's some traction in this whole strengths-based development movement. I mean, the idea of not focusing on somebody's weaknesses entirely, teaching them how to manage those, but embracing their natural talents, it's so simple, yet it's so mind-blowing because we haven't been doing it this whole time.
100% agree. The other thing that is important to note for this particular client, almost all of our interaction with the Ben admin system was via conference calls and webinars. Mm-hmm. So what better way to get to know who you're really working with than to roll out StrengthsFinder and find out?
Absolutely. Yeah, it lubricates that communication process from start to finish when you know the person you're communicating with operates in a certain way or a certain manner. So since that day, since you became strengths aware, tell us a little bit about what your strengths journey looked like. I mean, you talked about it a little bit in your professional life, but how have you really kind of adopted your top 5 and ran with them?
So, I have command, and kind of been told my whole life I was bossy. So now when someone tells me I'm bossy, that's the first thing I say. Well, as you know, I have command, so
It's a
I'm
talent.
predisposed to be this way, and you should just appreciate me for that talent, right? Mm-hmm. So I've used that a little bit in my personal life, and I've shared StrengthsFinder with my family, as a matter of fact, and have rolled it out to some of my friends and said, hey, this is a really cool thing. It's taught me a lot about myself, taught me a lot about how I communicate with people, how I may come across. Obviously, having command, bossy might be high up there. But I think with my woo playing into it as well, I do it in a friendly way, right? Because I'm not trying to turn anybody off, because
Right.
I'm all about gathering people and bringing them over onto my team. So everybody that did it and actually looked at my strengths was like, oh boy, we wish we had known this a long time ago. Mm-hmm. So it's been really great in my personal life and my career.
What did your family say when they saw your top 5?
Not surprised whatsoever.
Good.
Not surprised whatsoever. I've always been kind of a, well, what about this and what about that? Have you guys thought about that? Oh, that idea really isn't the greatest. What if we did it like this? So that's my strategic coming out, and it's very common and they're used to it. But I could see someone that doesn't know me very well may look at that and be like, wow, that girl, she doesn't want to listen to my ideas. And I love to listen, but my strategic automatically starts thinking about maybe a better way to get to the same path, right?
Right. Yeah, you brought up a good point. I mean, that initial interaction we have with somebody for the very first time, now we're aware of our talents, we're aware of our top 5, but they're not. So you got to kind of, one of the things I like to do is, without bombarding somebody with telling them my top 5, once we get in a conversation, I say, oh, I found out my top 5 through the StrengthsFinder assessment, and this is what it is, and this is what it kind of told me about myself. Have you ever heard of that? And they'll say, no, I'm interested in that. But what I just did there is I kind of broke the ice and said, right. warning, like this may happen. I mean, my top 5 is strategic, futuristic, woo, ideation, and communication.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm a jabberjaw, especially if I'm talking about something I'm passionate about.
Completely agree with that. And weirdly, the only one of your strengths that I don't share in my top 10 is futuristic, which is number 13. So
yeah, it's but it's important. I think I was just coaching this group the other day, and I'll just share this short story. But they were sitting around and they were looking at each other's top 5 and these little placards we had in front of them, and you could just see their head going. The whole time they were just nodding as they looked around. Yeah. And I'm like, see? And they had no idea really. I mean, all they had was a simple breakdown of what the 34 themes were and then the definitions. We didn't start the training yet. There was no formal introduction to strengths. And they're still just shaking their head immediately. It was immediate that they started to realize why people were the way they were.
Absolutely. I think the thing that it has helped our office with is, and I believe it's Rhonda Boyle has actually used this quite a bit in her coaching sessions. It gives us all a common language. Like I know I'm bossy. Everybody that works with me knows I'm bossy, but they don't know that that's my command, right? So now everybody's like, oh, well, Stephanie's about to command us.
Yeah.
And we all laugh about it, right? It does give you a common language. It also, I would say, for our office, because I tend to have some of the more touchy-feely type strengths, very, very low on my list, it helps me better communicate with those and maybe be a little softer in my communication because I know that they're going to feel it more it's going to impact them more than it would someone else that I'm dealing with that has futuristic or strategic and all of those things. So it has been very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can reflect back to my days in basic training and I think, well, a lot of my drill instructors had probably high command, either that or they were putting on a really good show, but everybody responded differently to that. Different concept. I'm sure you're not running around making people do push-ups, but still.
It's a good thought.
It's a possibility. You're gonna write that down. So write that down. So what was that first strengths aha moment? When everybody talks about this, the first time where you kind of looked at the assessment results and you thought, initially I'm sure there was probably some thought to, well, what is this? This is a personality test. Oh, great, another assessment. But then there's always that one point where you're reading something and you go, yeah, that makes really good sense. And all of a sudden the information becomes insanely relevant. Did that happen to you?
It did. It absolutely did happen to me. And I think mine was really the moment that the report was generated and I went through and read my report and really looked at the tips that it gives you for using that strength or tips it gives you for communicating with a person with that strength. My aha moment was really the significance, right? So I've gone through my whole life building, and always being very type A driven, I guess, and not really realizing that that was me building my legacy, which is very significant, and I've always been in a position or felt I needed to be in a position where I felt like it was for something other than me, right? And not, before when I was account executive, I used these strengths to help my clients build the best benefit plan that they could possibly afford, right? Now I'm doing it with our employees from an aspect of helping them build their career paths. So I think that was my aha moment was, wow, I have been using all these strengths all along, didn't realize I really had them, that's what they were called. But I certainly have, my career basically drove me right up to the front door of what I'm doing now as Director of Operations. Never really saw myself in that role because I really enjoy the interaction with my clients, the relator, the woo, right? But now I have to turn that over to I get to turn that over to our employees. And that's equally as impactful.
So when you talked about helping your employees kind of, move along in their professional careers and embracing their own talents, how have you been able to do that? I mean, let's just talk to us a little bit about, so you're excited about this assessment, you're happy with the results. How do you introduce it to others and get them just excited about the potential that they can get all these insights for themselves?
So I should state that when I was asked to move into this role, I was basically going to be the first level of management ever put into this branch, right? And the person that I was going to be working the most closely with, who is my boss, but I also call him my partner, Jerry Roberts, he is our area president. And I had never ever managed an account with him. So I worked with him as a team lead, basically leading a team, but I did not work on clients with him. So for me, it was a very scary type proposition to move completely out of where my comfort zone was, right? So I asked him to take the test. He became very excited about knowing what people's strengths were because it would better help us build teams to work together.
Were his, I don't want to interrupt you,
sure.
but were his top 5 similar to yours, or did they kind of pair well and you had a little bit of a strategic strength partnership there? Did your bottom kind of rise towards his top and vice versa? No?
Now, he hasn't unlocked his 34 yet, but okay. His top, he's futuristic, a maximizer, achiever, relator, and strategic. So we shared 2. And I felt like, you know what? With the strategic and the relator, we were already working on that level because me being a team lead, I always knew with him, don't take him a problem. Like, if you're going to take an issue in, always have a solution, right? And I always had a solution because I knew, number one, that's how I work. He obviously really appreciated that. And it just ended up being a really great partnership. But through his excitement of taking the test for himself, we just started talking about, hey, our next strategic planning meeting. We have basically all the team leaders from our offices and some of our consultants and even our regional executive vice president and director of operations attend that as well. And then our human resources from the region comes. I said, let's roll it out. I really want to see what everybody's strengths are. Like, it's been really important for you and I to know what our strengths are so that we can build this partnership. Let's see what everybody else's is. He loved the idea, so I bought 80 books and rolled it out to first, I think there were 15 of us in that strategic planning session. I rolled it out to them first. And I think at first they thought I was a little bit corny, to be honest. But when I started talking about how Jerry and I had used it, through that, I believe we had worked together at that point about 6 to 8 months in my new role. I think they really started to see, hey, there's really some traction with this, and we need to give this a shot. And then everybody returned their reports to me, and I started doing some statistics and trying to see, you know, oh, well, naturally, certain people who rise to the occasion, achievers, tend to be some team leaders, right? So it was, or have a lot of competition based type strengths. So it was very good for our office. And then I'd say probably within the next 2 to 3 months, we rolled it out to the entire office.
Good. I love hearing stories like that where, where professionals at the top kind of the rank structure delve into this first and then influence others below them to kind of embrace it. And yeah, it is one of those things where, and I'll be the first to admit, I mean, I thought it was corny when I first saw it. I thought, but you know why I think people think it's corny is because it seems so simple.
I mean,
if there was this massive algorithm and you had to take this test and you know there was somebody sitting there on a leather chair trying to talk to you and ask you these questions about your childhood and really kind of peel back the layers, you'll probably buy into it a little more. But it's a small book and it's 177 questions and the assessment only takes 20 to 30 minutes or something like that. And all of a sudden you're given these results and they're so accurate.
So accurate.
You just think this can't be right. What kind of hocus and pocus is this? Yeah. And you know, themes are neutral. We don't judge people based on their themes. But it's kind of funny when I sit in a round table with professionals that have just taken the assessment, and they say to me, Andy, what does this tell you about me? And I can rattle off just a few things that I think maybe is accurate based on their top 5, and everybody in the room starts kind of laughing and going, "Oh, you so do that? You know, that's you." So it's a crazy tool, and I've never been a huge fan of assessments because it just never really was.
It's a label. You know, oftentimes assessments are labels, and that's the way people see them, and they don't see it as a positive thing. But I see this as very, very positive, so much so that I've even delved more into it because I was like, there's got to be something more than us just knowing what our top 5 are, right? We should be doing something more with this so that our communication can grow even more and the camaraderie between the teams can grow. So I've started my own journey of doing personal coaching and learning more by going to workshops so that I can bring that back and talk to people who may be struggling a little bit with maybe they have a split in their strengths, maybe they're a doer and a thinker, and so they think a lot about doing, but maybe not as much doing as they should be doing. So I try to help them kind of come to some conclusions about maybe how better to structure their day so that they feel more accomplished, and that's been very helpful to me as well.
Well, that's a great lead-in to our next question. I always ask this to people because I think, you know, you took StrengthsFinder and your team kind of took it, and you were in kind of a team capsule where people were slowly becoming strengths aware. But what about the individuals out there who are just taking it for their first time? They're getting their assessment results. They're not kind of being asked to take it by any kind of supervisor or manager or the CEO or the CFO or the DO. They're just taking it on their own. What advice would you give them? They just hit Control P. They're looking at their top 5. What advice would you give them to better kind of understand their results from their assessment and now be able to take that information and actually apply it?
I think for me, not just in work. I mean, obviously it's very, very valuable in work, but it's equally as valuable in your personal life, especially when you're communicating with people. Again, you have that common language, right? So if you're really, truly listening to what people are telling you and when you're talking just in general, it's helped. I'll just give you a very personal story. It's helped me and my sister a great deal. We haven't always been very close as children. Number one, I was the first child. She came a year and 10 days after me. So, you know, when you're a child that's growing up thinking you're going to be the only child, right? That was a big hurdle for me to overcome. I never really felt that close with her. We have really worked hard towards having a relationship, and it is a great relationship now. And I consider her one of my very best friends. But it's is getting ready to take the test because she's tired of hearing me talk about it, number one, and not know what her strengths are. But I keep telling her, I know you have empathy. I know you do. And because she just feels things so deeply, and I don't feel those things, it doesn't affect me the way it affects her. Mm-hmm. So I have to allow her to have those feelings. And it's been a struggle because I just don't feel the same way that she does. So I think for me, I've viewed her as being a weaker person than I am, right? And she's not. She's just very different than I am. But because we have worked really hard at our partnership, and that's really what, family boils down to being. You just don't get to choose your partner, right, like you do in marriage. But partnership has been really important for us, so that we have a common ground that we can stand on, and that we can have conversations and walk away feeling really great about those conversations, or deal with conflict and walk away feeling really great about, hey, we tackled that together. So that, I think, anybody can use that in their personal life. Anybody.
That's great advice. And my wife and I, once I had taken StrengthsFinder and I brought it home and I said, well, would you mind taking this assessment? She goes, sure. It really immediately revealed things about each other that we at one time identified as problems within our relationship. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's harmony, empathy, relator, and she has these deep, deep emotions and feelings, and she can tell what other people are feeling, and I'm just kind of blind to it. I'm like, what's their problem? And she'd be like,
absolutely 100% agree.
So it changed the whole dynamic. You know what? I stopped saying things, because I think there's always a time in relationship, regardless if it's a partnership as siblings or a marriage, where you do in the beginning try to change that person. Why can't you be more like this? Why can't you be more like this? And that once you see that top 5 and you start putting together those puzzle pieces, it really reveals, I don't want you to be anybody else. This is who you are, and now we need to learn how to communicate. So that was really good, insightful advice. Thank you. So I always ask this question, and sometimes people say, well, I like all of them, but I want to know, just because I'm curious, what is your favorite top 5 theme, and why?
I like them all, I have to be honest, because they've served me very well in building my career. But I would say the one that probably serves me the most is my woo, because I do genuinely love people, and I find myself talking to people in the grocery store, in the checkout line, right? Like, who does that? And I will totally embarrass people that are with me, because they're like, do you know that person? I'm like, no, but there's nothing wrong with asking them how their day is going, and hey, how are you doing today? Oh, I just assumed that you knew that person. No, I'm just chatting. And they're like, how do you do that? You're so weird. And I'm like, now I can say, hey, I have woo, man. I can't even control it. There's no light switch. I can't turn it off or on. It's just who I am. I love people. I just love the interaction of people. You can change a person's day just by asking them, hey, how are you doing? Hey, Merry Christmas. You can say nice things to people, and it just takes a few minutes, right? And it can mean the world to them. So I'd say woo probably has helped me the most throughout from childhood on.
Yeah, well, childhood, you bring up another good point. As we reflect back to how we acted as children, and I remember vividly, I was in swim team. It was summer swim team, and we had, at the end of the season, we had this party. They'd have a DJ there, and all the parents would be there. And I remember the biggest event, or the biggest, people got so excited, is when I was 11 or 12 at this time. I would stand up on a picnic table and do skits of my mom, just joking around with my mom. And my mom would sit there just not embarrassed, but look at me like, where do you get this? Because she's not like that. And I would do just this crazy skits, and everybody would come up to my mom and say, oh, your son, he likes to talk. And my mom go, yes, but I don't understand it. Why?
I've been told that as well.
Yeah.
I just feel like, being on stage is not scary for me. Yeah. Getting up in front of 200 people or 300 people and talking about something is not scary for me. I feel very energized by it. Yeah. And I enjoy the energy coming back from them and the interaction. But I have some people in our office that, if there are more than 5 people, they're not going to get up and talk. They're just not. It's just not who they are.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I actually had this insight the other day where I realized that I am more effective as a strengths coach in front of more people than I am one-on-one, because I actually get nervous. I get butterflies, a little fluttering when I'm one-on-one rather than in front of a large group of people, because I just feel comfortable. Because then when I'm sitting there one-on-one across from somebody, I still feel like I'm an effective coach. But, they're now conveying to me their problems, and, I'm coming back and we're talking strengths, but it always takes me a little bit longer to kind of get in a rhythm. But you put me in front of 600 people and I'm golden. Just point me in the direction of the stage and I'm excited. I'm very similar to you in that manner. So it's just amazing. And, I like to, this is the last question I'll pose, and then we can close if you have anything else you would like to add. But looking back, now let's just take, and this is kind of one of those introspective questions that you think, well, I got to think about this one. But looking back, how do you think your life would be different today if you never embraced strengths-based development, you never took the assessment, and you never knew what your top 5 were?
I think for me, I don't know what other word to use than validation. Those themes gave me the validation that, hey, this is who I am, right? You said something earlier that really resonated with me, and that was you try to change people, or you feel like you can change people, or you can fix them. Well, I'm not fixable. This is it. So it gave me the validation to know that really I was built for what I'm doing. That changing people's lives and giving them a better path and leaving a legacy. These are all things that have been important to me my whole life. Well, now I have the words to describe it, right? So that people can better get an idea of who I am just by walking by my office and seeing on the outside of my door, because we do have all of our strengths posted. Oh yeah, well, Stephanie, she's strategic. You know what? Let's go ask her this question because she might be able to help us with this. So the only word that comes back to me is validation.
Yeah, that's a good word. I actually really, really like that. And you brought up another good point. Sharing your strengths within the workplace, having them physically or readily available and physically available to see is an amazing thing, because this is a tool that helps you communicate with others. Why would you not want to be able to see what somebody's top 5 were as you're approaching their office? Maybe you're a little excited or upset about something. You want to know why that report's not on your desk, but then you witness that person who has number 1 deliberative, and you just know that they're probably proofreading the email for the 300th time before they hit that send button. Yep. So it's just it calms everything down. It's like it's like putting on some like ocean wave music in the background. And that's corny, but it's true. It's
so true.
It just calms things down, and for me, it was a huge confidence booster, because when I left the military, I was felt like I was closing my eyes, trying to sling darts in a direction because I didn't know where I was headed. But this gave me some solid ground to walk on, and it kind of helped me get to the direction, or to the point that I am today, by pointing me in the right direction. So amazing things, amazing stuff that you brought up. Do you have any closing comments or last minute insights you want to reveal before we close out this broadcast?
The thing that I think has been the most important for me and for those in my office is that we don't really call it a test. We call it more of an assessment. Just because sometimes test has a negative connotation to it. Nobody likes taking tests, right? Nobody likes being labeled something. But the thing I talk to them about is this is an assessment that we ask everybody to do, including our new hires, because it really helps us know how to better communicate. And that's really what it boils down to. It's all about communicating and making those personal connections with people so that you can make them feel really good about the strengths that they bring to the table.
Very, very, very well said. All right, Stephanie, you've been an amazing guest, an amazing interview. Thank you for reaching out. If others are listening to this broadcast and they want some more information, or they want to view a recorded version of this interview that we just did with Stephanie Ruminer, you can visit UnleashStrengths.com and click on the Thematics tab. Also, if you would like to be a guest on the show to schedule an interview, email me, Andy, at UnleashStrengths.com, or give us a call. We still have one of those phones, 815-441-2219. You can always hit us up and like like our page on Facebook, facebook.com, and we are trolling the streets of Twitter. It's at UnleashCSF. Again, at UnleashCSF. And please, stay with us. We're just trying to interview people and get some insights into how they're using Strengths and StrengthsFinder and their top 5 talent themes in their everyday lives. So, Stephanie, thank you one more time for being my guest, and I really appreciate it.
This has been great fun. I appreciate it so much.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.